There's a story I heard about a young man who went on an adventure out into the jungle. Well, he met a tribe out there, and they invited him to dinner. Well, he went to dinner. They realized that they had a whole elephant. And he asked the head chief and says, "How are we going to eat that?" And the chief just responded with a slight grin. And he said, "One bite at a time." Join me as we talk about being thrown to the wolves. Hello, and welcome to the Surging Forward broadcast, where we're helping you to have a positive view in a negative world. My name is David Valentine, and I'm here to help you see the value in the job you do and how you can keep surging forward. Well, hello, and welcome to the Surging Forward podcast. I'm your host, Dave Valentine, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to learn a little bit of leadership skills and how you can be better in your job, your career, and especially if you're in the trades. Before I start today, I wanted to give a little shout out to a few friends of mine. And the first one is Tony Griffin. I wanted to say thanks for all that he has done in the social media realm that I've seen. He has started his own electrical group on Facebook. And those of you that don't do social media or you're not on it, you might want to check it out. There's a lot of cool information. I'm just now getting into the social media area and learning a lot myself, but there's a lot of vast information out there for all of us to share because we all live in our own little niches, and then you find out there's so much more nationwide and worldwide. But if you're not on Facebook, you might want to go ahead and sign up and get on one. And if you're on Facebook, check out his new group. It's called Electrical Tips and Tricks. And it's a great site where people are just putting in their own ideas on how to make your job easier. And Tony Griffin's a real great guy. He's actually, I have to give him a lot of credit. He's actually going through the first year apprenticeship program, and he's going to go all the way through. And, he'll eventually be in my class. But, he probably knows more about the electrical field than a lot of guys that's been doing it for a while. So, he's humbled himself to want to take those steps, like I talked about in the last podcast, taking the next step. He wants to get the qualifications behind him. So, congratulations to him. And I want to say thanks for all the stuff that he's actually teaching me. And that's what it's about. None of us are smarter than the other. We just all have different stories. I also like to give a shout out to Jeff Butcher. He left us a comment. He listened to episode number 28, Making a Decision, and he tells us of an experience that he had back in the 80s, but I really like what he said. He said, Teddy Roosevelt put it something like this: the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. But the worst thing you can do is nothing. Well, thank you for that paraphrase, Jeff, and really appreciate that. So hopefully you're listening, and thank you for your support. And trust that you're staying safe. Well, the other person I want to talk about is my old good friend, and I actually interviewed him on the podcast a while back, is Tom Bennett. He's doing a great job out there, and I just heard that he has actually, he just graduated from an apprenticeship program about 2 years ago, and he's actually been given his first large job to run. Well, now he is actually taking that next step and moved into a totally different category. Now you have to understand people, you have to be able to lay things out, and even though he knows quite a bit about electrical, he's a good electrician, he's finding out that there's a difference when you're actually controlling or after you have to be in charge and you're responsible for certain things. So I'm going to dedicate this podcast to Tom, and I hope that he's listening. And, if you're listening and, you know somebody who is getting ready to run a job or needs help in how to actually lead people. That's what this podcast is for, especially this episode. That's what we're going to be talking about today. This episode is titled Being Thrown to the Wolves. So What does that actually mean? Well, what that means, and we hear that terminology a lot, being thrown to the wolves. Well, usually what it means, you're out there, you're doing a great job, whether you're an electrician, plumber, carpenter, HVAC technician, or whatever you happen to be, whether you're running ductwork, whether you're doing roofing, or whatever job you happen to be. You're doing a great job out there, and you love your work, and, you stay out of all the negative press, and you're just doing a good job. And all of a sudden, you get that promotion you've always wanted to do, and you say, hey, we want you to run this job. Well, at first you're excited, but I know deep down inside what ends up happening, you get this little check in your gut, and you're just like, oh my gosh, now I have to look at the budget, I have to look at the money, I have to plan all these things, and worse yet, I got to deal with people. And on top of that, I just found out one of the guys that's going to be working under me, me and him don't really get along too well. So what do? How am I going to handle that situation? Because getting this job now falls under me. So I don't have any training. I don't know what to do. So a lot of times people go on there blindly, and I've seen this over my career many times, as a project manager and working jobs. You take a guy and you promote him. Excuse me. Let me take a drink here. Sorry about that. But you promote, but you don't give him the proper training to be a leader. You see, being a leader, you're not, there's nothing that says you're born to be a leader. I don't think anybody is really born to be a leader. I mean, yes, some people have A personalities and so forth, but that can actually be detrimental because, a lot of times in A personalities, you have to hone that down because you tend to have it's my way or the highway attitude. And my way is always right. Well, even though my way might be 90% right, the guy who has 10% right, his may actually be the better idea. So we're going to talk about a couple things, and I hope I can get through all these because I'm actually recording this episode on a different night than I usually do it because I've had such a busy schedule this week. This has been a crazy far since January, but it's been a good year. So, and I guess I should turn off all my phones and all my stuff here that I have running also. So anyhow, let's get right into it. Leadership. Let's talk about this. What's the first thing you really need to sit down and do? Well, during the introduction, you heard the story about, the elephant and one bite at a time. You've all heard that little terminology. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means when you look at this big job and you look at all the stuff going on and what's happening, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. Take a moment and look at it. Look at your drawing or look at the plan or look at the project. And if it's, even at work, if it's another task, look at the task as a whole. What is it that needs to be accomplished? What's the end goal? So you want to learn how to plan the job. And you can't do the whole job at one time. So even though you want to get an overview of the whole job, you just want to say, okay, kind of prioritize what needs to be done first. Make a little list of all the things, of the major tasks that need to be done to complete this. All right, so that's kind of the easy way to do it. And then when you break that down, you go to task number 1, and then you could break that down into even smaller tasks of what needs to be done. So once you do that, you have a little guide and like a little map that you can portray over to the people working under you. Because see, remember, when you were the one working, you only had one little area you had to take care of. You didn't really care about the whole job. Well, neither do the people under you. You don't want to overwhelm them. And so there's no need to be overwhelmed because you're not going to get it done. You have a certain amount of time to complete the project. And so you just break it down in simple little bites. And then it becomes manageable. And so, these are just small little tidbits that I'm going to try to cover in a very short period of time, but it's just some things for you to think about. The other thing that you want to take a look at and that you want to follow through with is delegating. You're going to have to learn how to delegate. You can't do it all. You can't go out and put your hands on everything, even though you might put your hands on some of it. You're going to have to look at what other people can do. And you're going to have to be clear in your instructions when you tell them. You don't have to get over detailed and be micromanaging. And we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes also. but you want to be able to share with them what the end result of that particular task is going to be so that they understand what needs to be done. Delegating is very important because, I'm even seeing it now. I'm almost getting to a point where I'm going to have to start delegating some of my tasks because my schedule, like I said, has just been through the roof since January with the response I'm getting from the podcast. I haven't even had time to develop any of the new leadership courses that I want to work on. And I have a lot of plans. I have a lot of things written on scratch paper, but I haven't been able to implement it because I haven't been able to delegate to get rid of some of these small tasks that I have been taking care of. So I need to follow my own advice there on that plan. So delegating is very important. Also, you're going to be dealing with all kinds of different people. You have to learn to accept other personalities. And they might even be things that you don't agree with. Whether it's a sexual orientation, whether it's a political affiliation, no matter what it is, you're going to have to learn to accept somebody's personality for who they are. It takes nothing away from their skill. You can not agree with somebody, but there's an old thing I used to always go by. It's called agree to disagree. You can you can even mentor people that you don't like. That's something I had to learn a long time ago, even as an instructor. You can't go out and judge somebody just because of what they're wearing or, whether they don't have the right jewelry that you have or they don't have the right political beliefs or religious beliefs or whatever the case may be. People are people, and you've got to treat everybody equally, and you've got to treat them fairly. And matter of fact, I've had people that I have coached through the field who have totally different religious beliefs than I do, and yet we're good friends. There's nothing wrong with that. And so you have to learn to kind of put your certain things aside. You agree to disagree. And I found also that sometimes if a person's willing to talk, we'll talk politics all day long as we might be totally different. But there's a time and place for it. But when it starts getting heated, usually I have to take the lead and say, you know what, we got to agree to disagree and let's move on. And you shake hands and you let it go. And you have to be the bigger man on that or the bigger woman. And you have to really check yourself so that you're not seeing yourself trying to convince somebody to your way. So that's very important, accepting other people's personalities. The other big one, and this comes with delegating, is understanding people's strengths. You want to know what the strengths are of the team that you have under them. And I use team versus crew because crew is kind of an older terminology to where, okay, hey, you work for me and you're going to do what I say. And, if you don't like it, there's the door. Well, that mentality has really gone away. That's kind of the way I came up in the field. And I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. And I never ruled that way. I never, ran my jobs that way. But I kind of came up that way. And, even though I did my job because I had to have my job and I was afraid I was going to lose my job. But I didn't like being talked to that way. That's a tough way to treat people. But you want to learn what their strengths are. What are they good at? My goodness, if a guy is good at hammering nails all day long, okay, and he's not good at cutting something, don't put him cutting stuff when he's good at hammering nails. Try to keep him on a task that he's strong in, okay? And then train him for the other tasks, which brings me to my next level, understanding people's weaknesses. Now, again, when you understand somebody's weaknesses, it doesn't mean it's something that, okay, you're going to say he's never going to do that particular task, but you understand what their weaknesses are so you know what type of training they need. And know where you're at and the knowledge that you have. One thing as leaders we always have to remember, and I keep it checked. I've been doing this, now for over 30 years. I've been teaching now for over 15 years. And I've had to learn that when I'm talking to somebody, even if they're my same age, they don't have this. They may not have the same skills I have. We may have the same foundation, but we've all worked in different areas. So don't expect that people know everything that you know. And at the same time, I don't care. It's just like I mentioned my buddy Tony. He's in first year. Shoot, he probably knows more about certain things in electrical than I do. And this is the way it is because he's exposed to different things that I may not have ever been exposed in. So it's a vast world of knowledge out there. I don't care what type of job you're doing. You never get to a point where you know everything. So understand a person's weaknesses so that you know how to train them. Okay? And yes, it is your responsibility to train them or to have someone who is strong in a certain trait to have them train them. You need to teach other people how to train. That's part of your job. There's an old adage where I remember one of my mentors told me years ago, you need to train your replacement. That's exactly what you need to do all the time. Don't be afraid that somebody's going to take your job. Train people to replace you because one day they will have to as you move up the ladder. So it's not a fear of they're going to take your job. It's a fear. It's just a natural progression as we move through our careers. So I've always tried to train my replacement. I have no problem sharing knowledge with anybody I come across that wants to learn. And you know what? It's benefited me over the past 25 years or so. I say 25 because the first 5 years, I was just as rugged as a lot of you guys out there. I could care less about anybody, and it was for me. And, I was just, gung-ho and let me do my job and get out the way. Well, like I say, that attitude really doesn't work. And again, that leads me to the next step, proper training. It's very important that when you have a person and you're putting them in a particular task, that you understand that they know how to do what needs to be done. That theology of what I just talked about of throwing people to the wolves, and that's a setup for failure. It really is. We joke about it, we talk about it all the time, but the fear factor that you have, and so that's what this is for, to help you go, okay, what do you need to do when you're thrown to the wolves? So what you want to be very careful is the people that are under you, don't throw them to the wolves. Don't set them up for failure and then watch them mess up, and then you go in and you're upset at them. Of course you're going to be upset because you thought you knew what they were talking about or what they knew what to do, and you found out they didn't. Well, that's not their fault. That's actually your fault as the leader for not understanding what their weaknesses were and not knowing if they understood the task at hand. You see, that responsibility as a leader now falls on you. See, anytime there's a problem on the job site or anytime there's a problem in the area or whatever, if you're the leader or if you're the superintendent or if you're the project manager or you're the lead person, anything that happens in the crew below you, that is solely your responsibility. There is some step, or the ones I'm talking about, that you missed somewhere along the way or you didn't do them properly. The other one I want to talk about, this is a tough one. You're almost going to have to learn how to be a counselor. Now, what does that mean when I say that? Well, you're going to get to know your people. And you got to understand personalities, where they're coming from. And people are going to come to you when they have problems. Now, I know a lot of people, they say, oh, leave your problems at home and you can't bring them to the job. No, because people's lives, if they have problems at home, it's going to affect their job career. And one of the ways I help and I listen to people as much as I can, but I'm not going to solve their family problems. Sometimes all you need to do is listen. But one of the things I used to always tell guys, I say, yeah, you might have a lot of family problems at home, but, maybe you better cut back on the partying, or maybe you need to cut back on this because, if you lose this job, you're going to have a lot more problems. And not saying that in a bad way, but now you're also going to have financial problems. So I think if you try to concentrate as best you can on here, that could be a step to helping your other problems become a little bit better. So again, don't try to solve everybody's problems. Just try to get them to focus on doing a good job there at work. All right? So the other thing is, make sure you're giving praise for that good job. Everybody likes to hear praise now and then. I remember I used to just go out and, my guys would do a good job and we'd be busting butt all weekend long and all week and working all this overtime. After about 2 or 3 weeks of that, I just go out and buy them pizza. Just have a good day out on a Friday afternoon, or sometimes just a t-shirt or even stickers, for Pete's sake. People love the stickers nowadays. I don't know what it is with the stickers, but I did that one year for one of my students in my class, and man, people just flipped out over getting a little sticker. These are grown people, but whatever works. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. People like to just be praised, and be called out that they're doing a good job. So do that. Try to do that for each person. I remember Bill Johnson talking on one of the shows he talked about. He makes sure he goes and talks to each person on the job and asks them, hey, is there anything you need? So make a point of touching base with each one of your guys. If not daily, at least every other day. Talk to every person that you're working with and ask that question. Everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? You'll find that goes a long way, because the whole idea of this whole system here is, see, if you're that tyrant boss that's always out there cracking the whip, my way or the highway, well, I was just talking to a guy at work today. When you have that attitude, and he was telling me the same thing, what happens? You get guys out there and they don't tolerate anything. It's my way or the highway. It's this or that. And they're screaming and hollering at everybody. But when he comes on the job site, boom, everybody's scurrying around working, looking busy. When he walks off the job site, you really think they care? Look back in your heart. How do you feel? What do you do when somebody chews you out in public? How do you feel? So think about that. So it's better to have people that respect you and they want to make you look good. They will work hard. And if they have a question that they're going to mess something up, they're going to feel free to be able to come to you, because they know you're not going to bite their head off. And guess what? The job's going to go so much smoother. And you're going to be able to help them, and they're going to grow, and then they're going to respect you in such a way. Again, they may not be your best friend or your beer buddy or anything like that to go out with you all the time, but they're going to respect you, and they're going to want you to look good, and they're going to want to work for you, and so they're going to do a good job. Well, that brings me to my last one here, and this is probably the hardest. Now, some people don't have a hard time with this because they don't have a heart and they don't care. But there comes that whole thing of discipline. And it's going to happen. You're going to have a guy who comes in late all the time or just totally messes something up. Okay? And, somebody said they knew how to hook something up, and they hook it up, and, they just totally destroy it. Let's face it, you walk around the corner, you're like, oh my gosh. You go from being totally happy at the moment, everything's running great, you go down to zero, and you got the fumes coming out of your head, and you're just ready to explode. Well, the first thing you need to do is stop back and check yourself. All right? Because you really don't want to blow up on a job site. Am I going to tell you I never blew up on a job site? Nope. I'd be lying to you. But when I have blown up on the job site, usually I go back and I apologize later. Now, the first thing you don't want to do is chew somebody out in front of people. That is just downright wrong. That is very poor leadership. Unless you're chewing out the whole group for something that everybody is responsible for, such as safety or whatever the case may be, and there's a time and place. When you're getting mad at an individual, you never dress him down in front of everybody. You always pull him aside. And one of the tactics, use that, give a little praise, always tell them what they're doing good. And then explain to them that, what they think they did wrong. Ask them what they did wrong. Let them tell you what they did wrong. 9 times out of 10, they already know they did it wrong. And so you'll get the apology from them. But your job is to build that person up. And if you really go back to it again and they put something in wrong, we have to always go back to the first thing, or one of the earlier things we talked about, the proper training. If they didn't get the proper training to do the job, well, whose fault would that be? I'll let you think about that for a minute. But there's also some people that they're consistently late, or they're just consistently messing up. And, you've already done as much as you can to help them out. And it comes that ultimate time where you may have to let them go, or should I say, fire them. Well, the sad part about that is, that sounds easy to do, but when you're put in that position, it really is a tough thing to do, because that's somebody's bread and butter. They have a family at home. They might not be making that much money as it is. And they already have a bad family life. You've already heard a little bit about that. You know what's going on. You don't want to fire them. But I tell you this, my friends, when you give somebody all the chances of what I just outlined about, you've planned your job, you've delegated properly, you're accepting other people's personalities, you understand your team's strengths and your team's weaknesses of individuals, you've provided the proper training, you've helped them out, you're able to listen to them with counseling or some of their issues, and I'm not going on and on forever. Again, you're not a counselor. You're just trying to get them focused on the job. And you've praised them for doing a good job. When it comes to that point that they're still not a good fit, my friends, it's not a matter of firing somebody or kicking them to the curb. It's basically that. They're just not a good fit for your team. And again, I had another mentor tell me for this. You don't fire people. People end up firing themselves. When you're a good leader and you provide all those steps I just gave and people still can't work under you, they have to get some more training. And there's some things that they need to work out in their lives. So again, these are just a few here. I am going to be working on some training videos for some leadership training that I'm going to try to get out there to, make available to y'all, but they're far from being done. I haven't even started on them yet. My schedule's just been crazy. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast here, but for those tradesmen out there who are HVAC or plumbing or electrical out there, we do have training now available nationwide for your code update courses, for your exam prep courses. We have those available if you go to surgingforward.com or if you go to affordablecodeupdate.com. You'll see these trainings here. I'm still working on the websites. Haven't gotten them the way that I want them to be yet, but we're working on them. And again, feel free to drop us a line. Just send me an email to dave@surgingforward.com. Let me know what some of the topics you would like to hear. I look forward to those. These are some of the topics I've talked about lately, and things that people have mentioned to me. And so that's what this podcast is about. It's about getting that information out to those in the trade, because that's what it's about. That's how we keep surging forward, my friends. Because as you surge forward, the question is, how many people are you bringing with you? So until next week, my friends, take care, be safe, and keep surging forward. God bless.